There is a source coming from Swedish media that purports that World Cup manager for the Swedish national team, Jan Andersson, has hinted that Zlatan should not come back for Sweden in the World Cup. Now, there's a bunch of comments saying that these quotes have been fabricated and whether or not they are a reliable source, but the general consensus seems to be that Sweden coach Jan Andersson simply said that Zlatan wanted to leave after Euro 2016, and then if Zlatan wanted to come back to the team, he would have to talk to Anderson first and then see what they can work out. So, will Zlatan Ibrahimovic play for Sweden this summer? Will he come out of retirement? And the better question is, should he? Should Sweden give him the nod to come back into the squad in that very difficult group they are in this summer? Again, they are playing against Germany, Mexico, and South Korea. Not an easy group. So, the two questions that essentially need to be answered. One is a short, the other one's a longer, more complicated issue. So the first question, will Zlatan come back for Sweden? I'm leaning towards no. I don't think he will. Because we know how Zlatan is, his personality. He's a very, I don't want to say self-absorbed. Some people would go so far as to call him narcissistic. But it's all part of his persona, the whole big ego thing. A lot of it is not really him being necessarily a narcissist, but just the fact that he's a very confident guy. He's very bashful. He's built this whole personality behind him as a player. He likes to soak in attention, especially since coming to the MLS, performing, having an outstanding week in his first couple of games with the LA Galaxy, scoring a couple of goals. So I think it's mostly a thing that is just for show. The next question, should he be allowed back on Sweden's team? And I'm going to give a very unpopular answer. No. No, he shouldn't. I don't think so. Why? Why? If you look at most of Zlatan's stint for Sweden dating back to the early 2000s, right around after that second Swedish golden generation of players like Larsson ended after the 2006 World Cup, we saw from 2006 until about a decade-long period to 2016 where Sweden built their team around Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And for most of Zlatan's final years on the squad, Sweden played as a national team some of their worst football ever. Sweden did not score a single goal in the Euro 2016 tournament. The one goal they did get was an own goal that was conceded by the Republic of Ireland. For the second straight European Championship in a row, Sweden finished bottom of their group. And look what Sweden did immediately after Zlatan left. They qualified going through three opponents that were better than them when they really had no business qualifying. A lot of Swedish fans will tell you that in recent years, this has been the worst team they've had in quite some time. There's really no player on the Swedish squad that stands out as world class. Some, as we had with the Sweden teams from 2002, 2006, and then going back to the 90s, the Swedish team of the 1994 era, who made it to the World Cup semifinals, won the bronze medal. But in qualifying, it's very interesting. It's very curious. It's very it's very curious that Sweden manages to qualify for the major tournament, the World Cup, almost immediately after he leaves. Now, they did it in a qualifying group containing France, the Netherlands, And then they defied the odds against a much heavily favored Italian side who are now missing their first World Cup in 60 years. Sweden, in my opinion, they don't have many world-class players, like I just mentioned. You look at who's going to be their go-to guy in the World Cup. It's Emil Forsberg, most likely. It's Jimmy Dermage. It's an aged Ola Toivonen. So, but you know what? I don't think they should bring Zlatan back because as valuable of a goal-scoring threat Zlatan was for Sweden, because of the fact the team was built around him, I think it held them back. And it's not necessarily Zlatan's fault, but the way that he was implemented in the team towards the end of his career. I would not bring him back for two reasons. One, because if he just gets the call-up like that, Sweden would have to find an effective means of integrating him back into the squad after a 2-year-long hiatus, less than 2 months away from the World Cup. So in other words, when you go through this whole preparation for the World Cup, all of a sudden a player comes back into the fold, you have to make them part of your plan, your preparation. I also think, number two, that he would potentially steal the spotlight away from the rest of the team, where the whole narrative will become about him and not the Swedish national team. And if Zlatan knows that's the case, and he wants to come back anyway, I think that's incredibly selfish. So, and reason number three, well, there's three reasons, not two. And the biggest reason is that Sweden needs to move on. They need to move on. The Zlatan era, if anything, prevented them from returning to the global stage. This is the first World Cup in 12 years. And for Swedish football standards, that is absolutely inexcusable. Because prior to 2006, Sweden was almost somewhat of a mainstay in World Cups. This is a team that decades ago was decorated. World Cup runners-up, reaching 2 or 3 World Cup semifinals in their history as well. Sweden themselves, back in the 50s and 60s, being one of the best teams in the world, along with that other Hungarian team in Czechoslovakia. Sweden has been in the dark as far as World Cups are concerned for the last 12 years. And the minute that he leaves, they get back to the World Cup in such impressive fashion, toppling better sides. Maybe they don't need him anymore. I think long-term Sweden is better off without him. I know it's unpopular because Zlatan, he brings that flavor to the team, brings that personality. Like I said, seeing him in a World Cup one last time would be quite a spectacle. But I just think that it would sap attention away from the team. It would make it all about him. And I think that Sweden needs to move on. That's just how I feel. So if I'm Jan Andersson, I don't let him come back. Not out of malice, but for the sake, the long-term future of the Swedish national team. If that's me, the manager, sometimes you make decisions as a manager that are not popular, but you do it for the well-being of your national program in the long term. I would not bring Zlatan Ibrahimovic back. I don't think he should be allowed back onto the team. Whether or not he will is anyone's guess. So leave a comment below, like, subscribe. Do you disagree? Do you think he should be brought back? I'll see you later tomorrow. Hopefully, God willing. Until then, everybody, have a good night. Much love and peace out.